Hi, everybody. It's Annmarie from Organize Me, and today I am absolutely thrilled because I have dragged, kicking and screaming, my absolutely beautiful business partner, Marie Limpert,
Hey.
into the camera screen. And when I say kicking and screaming, I do not lie.
Yeah, this is not one of my favorite things to do, for sure.
So that's why you see my face all the time. But we thought it would be really great to come on here and speak today because Marie has been in the middle of this crazy keepsake project that she's been working on. And it is the culmination of years of gathering different keepsakes for her kids, let me specify. And she actually, after weeks of going through this, has inspired me to start my own project. And so I've been picking her brain a lot about what she's been doing and what she's encountered and how to make it manageable, because all of our kids are in college. So, we have a lot of stuff that we're readdressing. So in talking about it, I said this has to be able to help other people who might be using quarantine to do the same thing. So thank you for coming on
You,
with me today.
you're welcome.
So I want to specify that this project is a little different than some other people who may be, their kids are smaller and they're right in the midst of gathering stuff every year, school keepsakes, things like that. We actually went through that process, and now we're kind of readdressing all the stuff that we gathered all those years ago, because our kids have gone through nursery, elementary, middle school, high school, and now they're in college. So Marie, let me just ask you to kind of just set up. What did you set out to tackle this time around?
Okay, so I wanted to specifically focus on all of the paperwork that I've accumulated over the years from my kids, from anything that they drew to projects that they did in school to really all the way from the time that they could actually write, any drawings they might have done even at home. So notes that they've given me and Freddie, just all these like cute things that they've written to each other. But primarily the bulk of it was all school keepsakes, starting from, nursery school all the way up to really, I want to say like middle school, because by the time they got to high school, there really wasn't much of that. A lot of it was just on the computer. So that was the general, substance of what I'm going through.
Yeah, it's amazing how it gets smaller as they get older.
Yeah, it's
There's,
sad.
there's fewer dioramas and three-dimensional pieces and all that kind of
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
I mean, as the years went on, and you and I talked about this, how we tackled it, when our kids were little, I tried to be pretty good about, as not so much that day that they came home with something. Of course, they're so proud and they want to just show me, and I hung it up on the refrigerator back when you can put a magnet on the refrigerator. Or I used one of those decorative Martha Stewart boards, like those craft boards that you can just slide it in.
Yeah.
But, pretty much like after they got past the fact that they were so proud and they kind of forgot about it, by the end of the week or so, I would dwindle down like what I knew already I didn't want to keep, you know. Um,
You were so good about that.
I tried. I
She
really
tried.
tried.
And just so you all know, who, if you're watching, I was not. I found that to be very anxiety provoking. So I had like one area, one bin where I would just put all of it, and I completely delayed and deferred that decision until the end of the school year. And then I was really good about taking a day and going through it. And I made probably different decisions because I waited and didn't address
Hmm.
it as I went along. But it just goes to show that there's no right or wrong. You do
Exactly.
what's for you. Like it would have made Marie nervous to wait, and it made me nervous to do it right away. But by the end of the school year, we were both on the same page.
Well, with Nicholas and Daniela being only 14 months apart, it was like pretty much I was getting double for the
Yeah.
same kid. But I did try to like stream down as much as I could, I mean, but in the end, I still had clearly quite a bit of stuff that I've accumulated over the years. And that was with me purging down back then, so Anyway,
So
you
what are
know.
we looking at then? So when you first started this project during quarantine, when you pulled it all out and took a look at it, what did it look like? What did it look like?
This had been something that I've been wanting to revisit from a while ago. And, obviously with COVID, and then the fact that, Freddie wanted to basically go through things in the garage, because that's where I pretty much had a lot of these bins, and not in the actual garage itself, but like on the top area. Like he created like a little loft area where he, did like a makeshift kind of second floor, so between that and the attic, which we had as only crawl space, space was starting to get smaller and less accessible, to use over the years. So a big thing was, let me revisit these keepsakes. So I said to him, just take everything out.
Oh
We
God.
took everything out that was in the garage. And I'm like, I had to brace myself and do it in stages, because I had to mentally wrap my head around the fact that all these freaking bins were going to be in my house. So I had him put it on the deck first, and it sat out there for a good week. The rain was coming. I put a tarp over it.
Oh my
I put it under. I put one of our tables, our folding tables, so I could put some underneath. So it was outside for a while, but mind you, the Sterilite Ultra bins that we always recommend have been used and repurposed and weathered all these rainstorms that we've had perfectly. So a little shout out to Sterilite Ultra. But yeah, so it stayed outside for a bit.
So you had, wait, so he brings them out so he could do his project, but you're not mentally ready to bring them into the house yet.
Correct.
So you had like a little interim time. How many people can relate to this? I
Oh
feel
my
like
God.
people are going to be screaming at the stage going, oh my God, I totally understand that. It sounds
Yeah.
crazy, right? That you would take it out only to cover it and keep it outside. But that's kind of part of the process,
Well, when you have other people that you live with, obviously you need to compromise and try to work things out where, you're not halting them from, kind of progressing, and moving ahead with their project. So, I think I put him off long enough, and I just was like, all right, let me just do this. So when I was ready, I brought them into my living room, resigning myself to the fact that, okay, my house is not going to be visited by anybody because of the quarantine, and that this was going to be an ongoing project. I knew. And I was like, all right, let me just resign myself to the fact that I'm going to be living with all these bins between my dining room and living room, maybe 15 bins and boxes. Now, mind you, though, the bankers boxes were definitely something that I was like, I got to purge them down. I would never use bankers boxes today. This is something that, we did years ago, and surprisingly, they actually withheld all these years, because usually in different climates, weather, garage, attic, wherever you're keeping it, the moisture, anything could affect the banker's box because it's cardboard, but
You're lucky you didn't.
anyway, so yeah,
Was living in my attic that ripped through.
yeah, I know.
That's how I learned my lesson years ago. I had a raccoon that ripped its way through my roof into my attic, and anything that was in a cardboard box got ripped up. It was mainly like holiday decorations, which are now
Right.
in plastic bins and protected. But all right, so now you have all this stuff in your living room. You're kind of mentally preparing. You had the foresight to understand this wasn't going to happen overnight. It was many years of stuff. What did you do to prepare to start the project?
Okay. So in order to prepare for this project, a conversation needed to be had with Freddie about where we were going to put everything. Understanding how much space I had available for this kind of stuff was essential. So that was a big thing, knowing where everything was going to be housed once it was done. I had to mentally prepare for this too, because I had to resign myself to the fact, like I said earlier, that it was going to live in my living room, in my living space. And I have an open floor plan downstairs, and it's not very big. So that was something I had to just kind of let that go. And I was fine with that. Also, where I was going to work. At the time, Daniela came back from, studying abroad. So now she's having to do all of her assignments for school. This was, mid-March, right? So now she was taking an art class when she was in Italy. So it's like I couldn't even use the dining room because that was set up as her art studio. So we thought about sharing the space, but then I was like, I already knew that I was going to spread out.
Yeah.
So I decided to use my huge coffee table that I have, and I decided to, like, let me do it when nobody's around, and most of the time I would do it at night because that was when I had my quiet time. I had the TV in front of me. I was able to like binge watch Jane the Virgin, which my sister-in-law's got me hooked onto, and you know, and that's where I did it. So it was the space of where I was going to be working too that was very important to kind of prepare. And also I needed to get my supplies that I was going to use. I knew that I was going to purge down with my plastic bins, but in the meanwhile, I needed a bin to be, or a couple of bins, one for each kid, at least to start with. What was really important too was to get those 2-gallon size Ziploc bags, because once I decided that, you know, how I was going to sort everything, I knew that I was going to put them in the Ziploc bags by year. So it was the Ziploc baggies, it was the 2 bins, one for each kid that I had available, garbage bags, because I was hoping to get rid of a lot of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and my Post-it notes so that I could do my sorts and just give myself a little label for each sort. And I think that was it, and a pen, obviously.
Those, those,
Sorry?
those post-it notes are so important, like what, just to piggyback off of what you just said, because it all looks alike sometimes. You know, even as you're doing it, like 2 seconds later, you could forget, wait, who was this? You know,
Oh, yeah.
because your kids are so close in age too. For you, I would imagine those post-its came in really handy in kind of keeping you on point, and so you didn't have to look at it again and say, what was it again? You look at it once,
Definitely.
you kind of categorize it, and then you kind of move forward.
What was helpful was, I mean, obviously, remember, this is a revisited project. So I did have things sorted out in bins and boxes in the past. So a couple of them had been by child, but then a couple had been by actual year. So I would have a combination of Nicholas's things and Daniela's things in there for that school year.
Okay.
So she might have been in kindergarten, but he was in nursery school.
Mm-hmm.
Or she might have been in 2nd grade and he was in 1st grade, you know. So I kind of had them rubber banded in the box, which, by the way, because of weathering and years later, rubber bands break and stretch out. So, you know, that definitely a lesson to be learned is not something that I would move forward doing. If it's a temporary thing that you're gathering things together and just need to, you know, make sure that nothing gets separated, rubber bands are great. But for like years of separating and trying to keep them, you know, in the box, not a good idea. So
And
they were attached.
to your point, you because you've inspired me now to do my own project. I'm way behind you. I'm not as far along as you are, but I had a couple of things that were rubber banded, and I swear to God, last night I'm sitting there on my bed doing this, and pop,
Yeah,
pop, they just snapped off.
mine were actually stuck on the paper, you know,
Yeah.
because remember, it's from being in the garage, the heat and all that. So, but yeah, so those were basically the supplies. I mean, you know, that would be something to consider, just gathering everything together at first.
So you're ready to go and you're set up.
Yeah.
So what were your initial, like when you first started, what were your goals for the project? And I'm curious because I feel like I know the answer, but like did your goal change or did your expectations change as you went along? But what was your initial thought when you started this?
So the time frame was definitely an unrealistic goal, because I underestimated. I was thinking, oh, I could do this in a week. If I think if I had a different space and the fact that it wasn't in my living room, I think because I would have had like some place to go and close the door and not have distractions. There was always people going in and out. You know, housework just doesn't go away. So my thought of thinking, oh, I'll have all this extra time, you know, because I'm staying home. I'm like, oh, I could do it during the day. But meanwhile, it's like I really needed to block out time, and that is something that, you know, I should have taken my own advice or our advice, right? We always tell our clients to block out time to put it on the calendar. And so when I realized that, like very early on, I was like, you know what? The best time was at night. And I'm a night owl anyway, so I get most of my stuff done at night regardless. And that was the thing. I would binge watch my shows. It would be after dinner. Like usually I would even start at like 9 o'clock, you know, so for some people that might be very late, but for me, that's me just getting started, you know. But you know, and I would probably get about 4 hours in. Yes, 9 to 1. Yeah.
I'd
You
be
know,
like pumped out at that time.
yeah, but very important to figure out, you know, a realistic amount of time that it's going to take. I was on a roll and then I stopped and then I went back to it, and listening to the news, knowing that this quarantine was going to keep going for a little bit. I mean, now we're 2 months into it. I've got probably a good, I'd say 80% of it done, you know, but if it was different circumstances, I think the fire would have been under me a little bit more, and I would have gotten it done a little bit faster, you know. So
Yeah. And it's important to have that self-compassion too, you know,
yes,
it really is, because you know, you were even saying it the other day, you know, you're feeling sometimes a little unmotivated and you don't know why, you know, because we're in the middle of a real to do, you know what I mean? This is unprecedented. And so the fact that you started, you know, with a vengeance, and you're like, oh, you know, and you had to take a break, that's okay. And I think that's
yeah,
important for people to understand too. We're organizers, we know what to do, and yet we're still having challenges with things like that because we're human. First of all, keepsakes are emotional, you know, so there's going to be that element of it, that the energy that it takes to sometimes even the easier decisions, you're still going to pause, you're still going to reflect. It's all good and part of the
oh
process.
yeah, I ended up taking pictures of a lot of you know, maybe cards that, you know, the kids wrote to friends, or other kids that gave to her, you know. I mean, I sent you something that
Hey.
Juliana gave to
Yeah.
me, you know, and as cute as it was or whatever, and I loved Juliana, but you know, I mean, I had to take a picture, I sent it to you, and I
What?
felt good.
You got rid of my daughter's creation? Do you
Come
hear this,
on,
people?
you told me you were okay with that.
Do you hear this, people? She threw my daughter's precious work out. And you know what?
I have a picture. I have a picture.
And that's the thing.
But
She has a picture and I have a picture. But that's a really important point, because
not to feel guilty. Yes, not to feel guilty
not to feel guilty, because
about letting something go.
yes,
Yeah.
it does not mean she doesn't love Juliana. It doesn't mean that she doesn't treasure it. She treasured it enough to take a picture and to keep it. We had this moment between us. It was fantastic. But she does not need to not be able to house the stuff that she uses all the time in her house, because her space is taken up. What we call prime real estate is taken up by stuff that she's keeping for a reason that is unrealistic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she's like, if Marie tied that, oh, it's going to look like I don't love Juliana if I don't keep this, and you know, that one little piece of paper that she's talking about in and of itself doesn't make the difference. But when you have multiple decisions
Right.
like that, it all of a sudden is taking up a chunk of your space, and you can't house the stuff that you want to house.
I'm
And
glad you brought that up, because it's not, you know, it's not so much the one piece of paper, it's the culmination of all the papers together, you know. So one thing, when you know, you were asking me about goals, when I realized, like, you know, that I have to be a little bit more focused on how I wanted to tackle it, I gave myself a goal. Now, we always, in terms of like breaking it down, you know, like I said, I kept seeing this wall of bins and boxes. So I decided to tackle one a day, if I could do one a day. And I was on a roll where I did one a day. And I tell you, it felt so good. And then I took pictures of the bags. I mean, out of one banker's box, I could have 2 garbage bags, you know, just from one banker's box, or, you know, 2 banker's boxes, whatever,
yeah,
you know. But it felt so good to have the garbage to show the representation of what I did let go. And that was with me, you know. Yes, I was fast with some things, but I was also a little slow with others, you know. But when we talk about the process of how everything went, then you'll understand, or everyone will understand, you know, how it was easy to kind of like let go of things. But the first part was obviously just creating the different sorts, you know. But some things, like, I knew off the bat, as soon as they came out of the box, I'm like, all right, this is too bulky. Let me take a picture. Let me throw it out and we're done, you know. Another goal that I had to do with bringing the kids in to help me. Not because I needed their help, but thought maybe it would be a great way for us to kind of revisit memories and, you know, kind of like let them see how far they've come, you know, as a little baby all the way up to now being 20 and 21 years old and, you know, doing so well in college. I know it's heartbreaking, you know. So
Cheer up right now.
that was one of the things that, you know, I had one night. Daniela sat with me and she's my purger. So like, she just started throwing things out and I'm like, wait, Daniela, I want to keep that because it reminded me of this. Or so like, I kept having an excuse for like every other thing that she was throwing out. And she's like, Mom, she goes, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. Like, why am I even here? You know? And you know, Daniela, she's very like blunt about it. So I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I couldn't falter for saying that, you know?
Right.
So I realized that, you know, now had it been Nicholas, you know, sitting there with me, it would have been different. So what I decided to do with them is when I got to a certain point, where I really did need their help, because there were some things that I was good along the way about writing their name and the year. That's really important too, for those of you out there for doing keepsakes. Try it on the back of your kids' artwork or whatever, just put the year or the grade that they were in, just a little tickler for yourself and who it was if you have more than one child. So I happen to have a Ziploc bag or a pile of things that really could have gone either way.
You're Italian. You're shaking your camera.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was you. It really could have gone either way. So another night, I had them both sit with me and go through them. And they were laughing. We're laughing. You know, we were like just recreating it or whatever. But like they honestly, they were like picking apart what drawings they did and laughing at themselves. But in the end, that pile that had no name on it, I want to say we probably kept one or two things, only because it was like a picture of something that had to do with a TV show that we always watched. And that just was something that we all watched as a family, which was That's So Raven. Mm-hmm. And so that's the only thing that we kept. But otherwise, like a stack this big went in the garbage. So
that came up when I did the post about when we just recently did our dining room, and so we got rid of part of our china cabinet, and so we were moving some things into the kitchen cabinets, and so I was going through stuff in my kitchen cabinets to make room, and I found 3 hand-painted glasses that Juliana had given us, and that I did a bad mommy post. Is Anne bad mommy? Because I was so hesitant. I just thought, you know, I don't want her to feel like I don't appreciate it. You know, I did love it at the time that she gave it to me, but we don't use it. We wanted to make room for the stuff that we are using. And, you know, there's all this anxiety.
I know, we create our own anxiety.
And then I texted her and she said, no, LOL, you could toss those.
Right.
And I wrote this whole thing. I don't want you to think I don't love it. Is it okay? Da, 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 da. Yeah, no, you could toss those. So how often is it us kind of creating this?
I know.
This idea.
It's a scenario that goes through our heads and it's all guilt driven. You know, but
it's something you brought up, something when we were talking early on, just, you know, not even terms of a video, we were just talking, and you had said that you had kind of like this awareness of who the project is for, like understanding when you're doing this, who is the project for? Is it to pass these along to them when they, you know, so they can reminisce? Is it stuff that you're keeping, like what are the decisions for?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think my goal for this was partly both. Partly for me to keep some things, but definitely for them. And with doing this after weeks later, it became very apparent then, like how much I could actually fit in what I'm thinking would work. So, you know, again, having 2 kids, I was like, all right, you know what? Literally from, you know, grade pre-K 1 or whatever, nursery school, all the way through until, like I said, about, you know, 13, 14 years old, I really could try to get it down to probably 2 bins per child And those are those 70-quart bins, that we use all the time.
Mhm.
And probably one 70-quart bin that is going to be like a family bin. That's going to be just, different cards that might have been given or what have you. Maybe Daniela to Nicholas, or Nicholas to Daniela, or, them to me, or to Freddie, or whatever, Um, so, so really, I think if I could do that, get it down to two per child, and it's really kind of looking that way. I would be very happy. I mean, considering I started with, you know, 14, 15 boxes and bins, that would be great to do two per child, you know.
We always say that you want to manage your space so that you can manage your inventory, like what's going to go in it. Or you have challenges in your space, and that's something that I think, it's great for viewers to understand too. You don't have an enormous attic. You don't have unlimited. You don't even
No,
have.
my attic is a crawl space, and that's what it's been all these years. So really, our taxes, like, or just old things that we're looking to kind of store, are in there, in terms of like just paperwork over the years. My keepsakes from when, from college, from high school, whatever. Like
Your own.
I have my own. So I
Your own.
have I have two boxes up there. Freddie probably has like a box or so up there.
So
And then
your mom is not housing your stuff over at her house then.
no. And that's the thing, like I want to be able to just be like, here kids, here you go. You know what I mean? And after that, if they decide that they don't want some of that stuff, then it's up to them, but whatever. I just know that for my part, what's going to be important to me to keep is where I'm at right now. This to me is now really probably round two,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even round
Round
three.
three, I think.
Yeah, I
Almost
think it's
three.
round three. Yeah, because I definitely got rid of round two, got rid of some bulkier things that were the kids' project. They were three-dimensional. I mean, all those ziggurats and what are some other things that volcanoes or whatever else that they had to do. But a lot of them was just it wasn't just paper, so it was like three-dimensional stuff. So stage two, I had to get rid of those, and I took pictures. I think there was only a couple of things that I kept.
I had Juliana had done a big, I don't know, it was some kind of fun class, because it wasn't even a historical. It was like, I think it was on Katy Perry or something like that, and she created this big stage, and it was three-dimensional, and she had this whole thing, and then she did like a report on it, and she had all these different visuals. It was there were a
Oh
lot
yeah.
to it. um, and we recently found the video that we took of her. We had her kind of not recreate the whole thing, but she walked around the whole project, and we filmed her, and she talked about what it was and how she went through it. And I just thought that was so fun. And I'm like, how awesome is this? We have this video.
Yeah,
I'm hearing her little voice talk about it, back in the
I
day,
know.
because that always gets me, the sound of their voice.
Well, and it's funny that you said that, because that's exactly it. With all of these projects that they've done, and any time that the parents were invited to go to these events, we have it all on video. And Freddie's got that all organized on the computer. So it's not like I I would rather actually see that than to have the actual thing, because like you said, you hear their voices, you see how
It was
cute
so
they look
sweet.
and how small they are, and yeah,
It was. It
so
gave me all the warm. It gave me all the warm and fuzzies, and it was certainly more than
yes,
even the physical thing would have been.
right,
And plus, now I don't have this big monstrosity taking up room. I have a
right.
little more attic space than you do, so I actually could defer the decision. Because that's what, like, more space is not always better.
Sometimes less is more if you're not discerning with how you manage that big space.
I think it's not better when you don't have, like, the strategies in place, the organizing principles that we teach.
Yes,
If you don't have those mastered, a big space can be a massive dumping ground. It could be just a
absolutely.
playground for more clutter and kind of chaos. It's obviously a blessing, for people that know how to manage it and can use it really well.